Now I want to talk about getters and setters, and we're going to take a quick example so that I can illustrate this for you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the US citizen class. I'm going to scroll down and then paste it down, and let's just give this another name. So I'm going to call this car, and it's not going to extend person this time, and it's supposed to be uppercase. And we don't need the super keyword because we're not extending anything. And let's say the car is going to have a name. Well, maybe not a name, but let's say a make and a model, right? So I'm going to come here and then say we need a make, which is a string, and also we need a model. So I'm going to copy this private as well and make this private and a model. Okay, so that's how we're going to represent our car, and we don't need these two methods down there. So we have a simple class, right, which is car. So class car, you can see it right here, ends on line 41. And then we have a constructor for that class, and then we have two properties on this class, the make of the car and the model of the car. And these two properties, as you can see, they're private, which means I can't access them outside of this class. So let's say I wanted to make this accessible. So one way I can do this, besides making it public, of course, or making it protected for any class that would extend this car class, I can just expose those properties using getters and setters. And as an example, I can come down here and then I can create a setter. Hopefully you guys understand the idea of getters and setters, but if you don't, when you have a getter, that means you're trying to get some value from the class. And whenever you have a setter, that means you're trying to set some value on the class as well. So if I want to define a setter, I'm going to use the keyword set. And let's say I want to set the make. So I'm going to say set, and then I can give it a name. Now this is going to be a little weird because it's going to look like a function, but in reality, it's just going to be another property on the class itself. And for example, I can say set car name, and that's gonna look like a function, so it's gonna be like this. And also whenever we're setting a value, we need to take that value. So let's say this is gonna be the car name, or we can just say value. So whatever the value is going to be, it's gonna be a string, and then inside of this body, we're just gonna say this that make. Well, we don't have a name, so let's change this to car make. So make. So this that make, and then we set it equal to the new value. So we're gonna say value. So this is a setter. Remember, we can't access this make outside of this class because it's private, but we want to be able to give access to it, or at least to set the value inside of it, besides using the constructor, of course, because whenever you create a constructor, you're gonna have to pass in the make and the model. And I can do the same for a getter. So I can go down and I can say, well, this is a private field. You can't really access it, but I'm gonna give you a way to do that. And I'm gonna say get, and then I can call it the same, car make. And this time we're not gonna take any parameters. And every time you have a getter, so a get with the name, you have to always return something. So here we're gonna return this that make, because that's what we're trying to get, the make of the car. So if I scroll down, and I'm gonna make sure you can see the whole class. And let's say I'm gonna create a new car. So I'm gonna say const, and let's say I'm gonna create an Acura, and I'm gonna say equal new, and then I call the class constructor. So that's gonna be car. And then I'm gonna pass in the make. So the make is going to be Acura and also a model. So I'm gonna pass in the model as well. And the model is gonna be TL. So that's an actual Acura model. So now if I go down and then I say Acura and I try to access the name, you can see that it's not giving me the option. And I try to access the make, you can see that I can't access it. So if I put make, it'll tell you that this is private, you can't access it outside of the class. But I can access it by using the getter. And the way that I can do this is just calling car make. Now you got to remember, this looks like a function or a method, but it's actually just a property on the class. You can see if I hover over it, it says property. And the same goes for the setter. It says a property. It's not really a method. Like if we scroll up and I put my mouse on this, you can see it says method. So even though this looks the same, except for the keyword, of course, the get and set, it's actually a property, which means that when we're calling it down there, we're not gonna put the opening and closing parentheses. So now we can console log that. We can show that on the console. So I can say console.log, and then I can access the car make just like that. And I'm gonna comment out all these other logs so that we don't see everything. So let's go ahead and run that. So if I go ahead and run it, you can see that we get Acura. So even though we weren't able to access the make directly, we can access it using a getter, as you can see that I'm doing here. Now I give these the same name, so this is probably gonna confuse you. So let me see if I can change those names. So instead of get car, I'm gonna put getter. So I'm gonna put a G, just so you know this is the getter. So this is the getter. So we're getting the name, which is gonna return just the name of the car. And I can run it again. You can see I get Acura. So now if I want to set the name, well, I keep saying name, but it's the make. So if I want to set the make, I can call the setter, as you can see here. So I can go down with the Acura again, I can say car make and then set it equal to something. So now let's say Honda. You can see again, I'm accessing this with the that operator, and then I don't have any opening and closing parentheses. And that's just how I'm gonna access it, because it's really a property even though it looks like a function. So if I copy this line and then go down, paste it again, because we changed the make, now we shouldn't see Acura, we should see Hyundai. Well, I wanted to put Honda. So if I go ahead and save and run, you can see for the first log we get Acura, for the second one we get Honda. So this is how you can use getters and setters. You really use the set keyword, you give it any name that you want. For the setter, you're always gonna take a value, so whatever they're gonna set the property on the class to, and then you're gonna use that value and then set it to whatever property that you wanna set it to. And usually when you use getters and setters, you always want to put more logic inside here. So here I can have, you know, more logic in here, because that's usually why you would want to use a getter and a setter, because you want to add some more logic to your code for whatever reason that you might have. Now you might be asking yourself, then what's the best way to do this? Should I expose my properties using getters and setters, or should I just make them protected or private or public or whatever the case? Well, the answer to this question is it depends. And I've been using TypeScript for a while, and I never really had to use getters and setters. I mean, there were opportunities for me to use it, but I really didn't use it. I used protected, and then I only accessed the property in the class that extends the parent class, and I really never found myself needing to do this. But sometimes when I'm using Angular, there's certain things that I want to do, because when I'm working on a very large application, the logic becomes really complex, and then I found myself using getters and setters because of some weird things that I need to do. But usually, personally, I don't use getters and setters that much. I use protected and then access the property from any other class that extends the parent class. At least from what I've been doing, that's what I've been having to do. I haven't really had to use getters and setters, but just so you know they exist, you can actually use getters and setters and then expose your private properties from your class in a safe way like we're doing here.